All right, good evening. Thank you for joining the Pasco School Board of Directors this evening for our regularly scheduled meeting. I'd remind you that all of our board meetings and study sessions are broadcast for playback on Charter TV channel 191. And you can also search YouTube for Pasco Schools and watch our study sessions or board meetings. Looks like we have a full house this evening. Thank you again for coming, and thank you to our student board representatives. We have a new student board representative up here, and we have 3 total student board representatives seated to my left. While they can't legally vote on issues, they're an important part of our decision-making process, and they help give voice to the students. They're leading a student advisory council of about, 20, 30 other high school students across the district. And that helps them grow their leadership skills, bring those ideas, consolidate and bring those ideas back to us after discussing them with Miss Whitney. And we thank them for that work. And also we're excited to have them go with us this coming weekend on Thursday through Sunday. We have our annual conference for student directors across the state, where we go and talk about school director issues ranging from legislative challenges, just operating, superintendent, hiring and firing superintendents. No. Of course, we would never fire the superintendent. Challenges that school board members go through across the state, and we're able to go learn about those, and these 3 student board representatives will go with us and be able to interact with other school board members across the state, also other student board reps, and they'll come back. And our next regularly scheduled board meeting is usually the 4th meeting in November. The board had decided several months ago that we learned so much at this annual conference that board meeting will be changed to a study session. And so we will use that study session to talk about what we as a board have learned and how we want to incorporate what we've learned into how the district operates in direction to Miss Whitney. And with that, we'll move on to the flag salute. We have McClintock STEM Elementary School Jaime Morales here to introduce the students that will lead us in the flag salute this evening.
Good evening, President Lehrman, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. Because I've been already criticized for my jacket tonight, I'm going to go ahead and step aside and allow our administrative intern, Michelle Grambois, to introduce our students tonight.
Good evening, Board President Lehrman, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. It is my privilege to be here tonight with 6 outstanding members of our McClintock STEM Elementary chess team. I would like to invite students to come forward and introduce themselves.
I am Lauren Roberts, and I have been playing chess for 2 years, and I am in 1st grade.
2 years. My name is Emmanuel Whitemarsh. I've been playing chess for about 2 months, and I'm in 1st grade.
My name is Vanessa Fedchek, and I've been playing chess for about 2 months, and I am in 3rd grade.
My name is Desmond Hill, and I've been playing chess for 4 years, and I'm in 5th grade.
Hi, my name is Taylor Bridges. I've been playing chess for about 3 years, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Giselle Barrera, and I've been playing chess for about 4 years. And as you can see, I'm the only one wearing a different shirt from the rest. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready?
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's the cutest thing ever.
Do you guys want to take them?
Stay there.
Here, students, stay up there for a picture, please. And our student board representatives will bring you a Pride of Pasco pin that you can put on your lanyard or on your backpack.
Now,
Also, we encourage you guys, when you are in 11th or 12th grade students, to apply to be student board representatives and do the job that these young ladies are doing right here, representing the board and continuing their leadership for their school district and their community.
I would also like to recognize and thank some additional guests that we have here this evening. Will the families of our chess team members please stand up? I would also like to recognize our 3 chess team coaches that are here tonight. Miss Whitney Billman, Senor Monica Rutter, and Mrs. Mari Smith.
Thank you, students, and thank you, family, for supporting your children in the chess team and also in their future leadership in the Pasco School District. Again, encourage your children to apply, have them apply in 11th and 12th grade to be a student board representative to the Pasco School Board. Next, we have agenda item number 3. We have the administration of the oath of office to a new student representative, and we have Miss Michelle Whitney here to administer that oath.
I, Isabel Stoll,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Washington,
and the state of Washington,
and will faithfully perform
and will faithfully perform
the duties of student director
the duties of student director
of Pasco School District Number 1
of Pasco School District Number 1
in the county of Franklin,
in the county of Franklin,
state of Washington,
state of Washington,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Thank you and congratulations, Isabel. When you get up to your seat here, we can have you introduce any friends or family that you have with you this evening.
I brought my dad, who's in the first seat over there, Hiram, and my little sister, Maya.
You should have her stand. Okay, that's right. And we'll put you on the spot here. You want to tell us what school you go to and what schools you have gone to in Pasco, and anything else about yourself that you'd like to share with us?
I attended Maya Angelou and was a part of their bilingual program. And then I continued the bilingual program in McLaughlin Middle School, and I go to Delta High School now. And Chiawana High School is my home high school, but Delta's my high school.
All right. Thank you. Congratulations, and we're excited to have you as part of the board. Next, we'll move on to agenda item number 4. We have roll call. So I'll ask Ms. Richardson to please call the roll.
Steve Christensen.
Present.
Present.
Scott Lehrman.
Present?
Amy Phillips.
Present?
Aaron Richardson.
Present.
Donna Craig.
Present.
Vanessa Lucius.
Present.
Isabel Stoll.
Present.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to agenda item number 5. We have special recognition, and we have Mr. Shane Ettinger here.
Good evening, Board President Lehrman, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. By proclamation from Governor Jay Inslee, November 13th through 17th is designated School Psychology Awareness Week in Washington. We are honored to celebrate and acknowledge the excellence and dedication of our school psychologists and what they provide for both the students and staff of Pasco School District. I'd like to share the names of these individuals and the schools where they work tonight, and those of you who have joined us this evening, please come forward to be recognized. From Chiawana High School, Jeanette Brumbaugh, Carla Esterhuizen from Twain Elementary, Alita Fernandez, who serves McLaughlin and Ochoa Middle Schools, Dwayne Franks, who serves McLaughlin Middle School, Laura Fritz from McGee Elementary, Pedro Gonzalez, who serves Robinson and Whittier Elementaries, Leland Graham from Chiawana High School, Darren Hansen, who serves Curie Elementary, Don Heineke, who serves Livingston Elementary and New Horizons High School, Valerie Heron, who serves Chess Elementary, Justin Kelly, who works with Longfellow Elementary and Pasco High, Stella Letham from Pasco High, Jean Lemon, who serves Franklin Elementary and Captain Gray Elementary, Lori Lucero from Stevens and McLaughlin Middle Schools, Gloria Matz from McClintock Elementary, Lori Olberding from Angelo Elementary, Courtney Pilatos, who serves Emerson and McGee Elementaries, and Aaron Ransdell, who serves Longfellow and Captain Gray Elementaries. Now I'd like to share the proclamation from Governor Inslee. Whereas children and youth learn best when they are healthy, supported, and receive an education that enables them to thrive academically, socially, and emotionally, and whereas schools ensure that students are able to learn when they meet the needs of the whole child and provide integrated, multi-tiered supports, and whereas children's mental health is directly linked to their learning and development, and the learning environment provides an optimal context to promote good mental health through connectedness within the school and community, and whereas sound psychological principles are integral to instruction and learning, social and emotional development, prevention, early intervention, school safety, and culturally diverse student populations, and whereas school psychology has more than 60 years of well-established, widely recognized, and highly effective practice and standards clearly articulated in the National Association of School Psychologists model for comprehensive and integrative school psychological services, and whereas school psychologists are specially trained to foster and deliver a continuum of mental health services and academic supports that lower barriers to teaching and learning, and whereas school psychologists help children thrive by nurturing their individual strengths in personal and academic endeavors, and whereas school psychologists are trained to assess student and school-based barriers to learning as well as individual strengths, utilize data-based decision-making, implement research-driven prevention and intervention strategies, evaluate outcomes, and improve accountability. And whereas school psychologists play a vital role in the personal and academic development of our state's children, now, therefore, I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, do hereby proclaim November 13th through 17th, 2017 to be School Psychology Awareness Week in Washington. So, after all those whereases, we would like to thank all of our school psychologists for making a positive difference in the lives of our Pasco students. Please come forward and
Thank you to all of our school psychologists, those that are here and those that aren't. We as a board highly value the whole child and also mental health. It's been a key topic the past couple years on expanding what we can do there. And as we've discussed the past couple months here, we have some additional funding coming through the state. We don't fully understand the limitations and ramifications of that money, but we have had conversations as a board and as a district on hopefully expanding our psychology and social workers in the schools. So thank you again for your work, and we know that it's important. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just come right over here by her name.
Oh, gee, Court.
No, right.
you get out, put your hand up. She didn't want to be there.
Isabel's mom's out of the country caring for a sick mother, so we wanted to make sure that there was a photograph of the occasion for her.
That's great. Thank you for coming, and we highly value family involvement. We know that that's one of the most important things in our student success, so thank you for coming this evening. All right, next we'll move on to agenda item number 6. We have approval of the meeting minutes. I would entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move to approve the regular meeting minutes of October 24th, 2017.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the regular meeting minutes from October 24th, 2017. Those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Regular meeting minutes from October 24th, 2017 are approved. Next, we have the agenda review.
There are no additions or changes to the agenda, but I would like to call your attention to a request for an executive session under 4231.10(1)G, which is for personnel, and I for litigation.
Okay, next we'll move on to agenda item number 8. We have audience comments. In just a few moments, I'll invite anyone in the audience at this time to approach the microphone and discuss any topic that you have questions or comments with the board. If you'd like further discussion than happens this evening, please ensure that your contact information is left in the back corner, either in the way of a phone number or an email address, and we'll get a hold of you for further discussion. Please try to limit your comments to 2 minutes, and at this time, the microphone is open. Seeing that we have no questions or comments for the board this evening, we'll move on to agenda item number 9, which is board communications. We'll start with Dr. Richardson.
Thank you. I want to thank the school psychologists. Many of you I've communicated with through work, and I appreciate the work that you do, and it's vital and essential to the success of so many of our students. So thank you for being here and being recognized. I wanted to welcome Ms. Stoll and Ms. Richardson. Some people have wondered if Ms. Richardson and I are related, and as far as we know, we are not related, but welcome to your new positions, and we look forward to working with you. Also wanted to congratulate my fellow board members that were recently reelected. It's not easy to campaign, and so that's and hard to do, I imagine, as a sitting board representative, but congratulate them. It was great to see so many candidates, and there'll be another opportunity in 2 years for 2 of the seats if people are interested, and I encourage them to stay involved in school board issues. Over the last couple of weeks, I visited Franklin, McGee, Livingston, and Markham elementary schools. Had a chance meeting with Stregonona and Scarecrow at 2 of those, and a Scarecrow at 2 of those schools, and it was great to see the things happening at those schools. Finally, as most people know, the bond right now is too close to call. It's essentially we're right at the 60% supermajority for that to pass, so we'll be waiting anxiously till November 28th to see the final results of that. I just wanted to thank all those who really worked hard to promote the bond in our community, and really a huge effort that most people don't realize occurs. I personally believe the bond would be passing in a landslide if it weren't for some false statements in the voter's guide. So I'd like to see us do whatever we can in our power legally and legislatively to make some changes so that type of thing cannot happen in the future to our community or to other communities that desperately need schools. But we'll be praying and anxiously awaiting the results on the 28th.
I just wanted to thank the community committee that worked so hard on the bond. You did a great job, and I appreciate all your hard work. Thank you.
So I agree, there's been a lot of work done on this bond, and I think that's hopefully reflects in the outcome of this bond. So since we were last here, I went to Longfellow Elementary School, was able to walk through many of the classrooms there and get a better appreciation for some of the space utilization that's going on in our schools. I think when we talk about capacity numbers, those can be a little bit misleading because we're not using every classroom as a general ed classroom, and so it can be a little bit challenging. And I think that's one of the things that we've got to get a little better handle on and better definition of going forward. And I do want to comment on this last election. There's, everybody who voted knows that there were 3 advisory notes to the legislature in there, and all of them had to do with taxes. And if you noticed, overwhelmingly in our state, if you looked at the overall results, they were all voted rejected. In other words, tell the legislature no on taxes. I suppose what we don't know, though, is that every one of those is related to education. There was the first tax on 2242, which has to do with basically the swapping of state levy, increasing state levy and reducing local levy, which will be a great benefit for our community. Not every community benefits like we will. The second one had to do with the business and occupation tax, where they're making some adjustments, closing some loopholes, primarily to generate more revenue for education. And then the third one had some miscellaneous taxes, one of which was on bottled water. I'm not sure it's going to generate a lot of money, but all of that money helps with the big shift in money to education. Now, we're a state that doesn't like taxes. It's been rejected over and over again. But I believe it was two years ago where we voted on smaller class size. Well, that overwhelmingly passed, but smaller class sizes requires A, more teachers, and B, more buildings to put students in. And so we've got a little bit of a challenge here on we want stuff, but we don't want to pay taxes that are required to pay that. So not sure how you voted, but just to be aware of those types of things in the future, that revenue that would be generated by those taxes does directly benefit us as a school district.
I would just like to thank the board for my opportunity to be here. I'm very excited. And news at Delta High School. We recently had Fall Fest. That was a success, and I noticed as compared to previous dances, we had more participation and a lot more people come, which was really exciting. And right now we're hosting a food drive that's going till the end of November, so wait to see how that goes.
These past weeks, I've been busy with homework. And today at Pasco High, we had our career day, which was fun. Miss Whitney was there, and it was nice hearing from her and also getting more information about careers that the students are interested in. I heard many of the students enjoyed it, and thank you to those professionals who volunteered.
For the past 2 weeks, or a little bit longer than that, bowling has started at Chiawana High School. I just want to do an update on something I'm personally proud of for my school. Our principal, Mr. Walwork, he does coffee with our parents, I want to say twice a month, and not a lot of people show up, but enough to keep going, and he loves it, and the parents that do show up love it, so that's something I just wanted to mention for him because he's really good at doing that. Our band actually won the Foster Project Award of Excellence. They only hand 5 of those out nationally, so that was a really big deal for us. And within these 2 weeks for me personally, it's been very hard. They say your freshman year and your junior year are the hardest, and they were not kidding. So.
Well, we haven't met for, I think, 3 weeks because we had a 5th Tuesday in October, which was nice because it was Halloween, so I appreciated that. But we've been, I think we've all been busy. I visited Emerson and Delta and Chess. It was really fun to go tour Delta and see all of the amazing things they do. It is truly a unique high school that offers a very different form of education, and they have great scores to show for the success of that place, but definitely not for all kids. And I love that we are helping some kids, so that was really fun. It's always fun. My favorite part of visiting schools is visiting with the principals. They always have, great ideas, great concerns, and I learned so much about our district and what's going on by visiting with the principals. I've loved this new thing we're doing with the board because we because it ensures that we either hear from or are in every elementary school every year, and the principals also are enjoying that. They love knowing, they love board members there, but they really like knowing that we're coming before we actually show up. So that's been convenient as well. I served on the bond committee, and I so appreciate their efforts and how organized it was, and even knocking doors. I cannot believe how easy that was. You guys did a fantastic job, and regardless of the outcome of this bond, we so appreciate the work that you have done. Anyway, I was actually busy during most of the Veterans Day assemblies this year, but I have a friend who teaches music, and she brought over her iPad and showed me one of the Veterans Day assemblies, which was really fun. I really enjoyed seeing those kids, and it was fun watching her. She's come over a couple times just to show me how excited she was about the curriculum. She's just loving the new music curriculum, and I do want to recognize our veterans and all that they have done for us, and the freedoms that we enjoy here because of it. These boards are a representation of that freedom, those freedoms that we enjoy.
So also congratulations to Ms. Stoll, and thank you, Ms. Richardson, for what you've been doing and setting up for this board meeting and on your new position as well. Also, congrats to the fellow board members here who were reelected. And I was able to visit Emerson. I've heard, what I say, during times of discontent that sometimes teachers like us to just stop in without knowing, so that it's not scripted and that the principals are taking us to certain classrooms. So I haven't always been setting up my visits. I've just been stopping in, and I'll stick to that. That's the reason, not that I don't plan far enough in advance. But thank you to those who are flexible when I do stop by without calling in advance to allow me to visit. And also thank you to Ms. Schultheis a couple weeks ago for taking me around Emerson and showing me the great work that the teachers are doing at that school as well. Thank you to PCBS and all the other community members that worked so hard in order to gain additional votes for this past bond. We appreciate that work, and hope that momentum continues for either the next bond. Well, eventually we'll have another bond, whether this one passes or fails. So for our next bond and for levies in the future, I think the work that was done was phenomenal, and hopefully we can continue that work and kind of change the culture in Pasco. There's some communities that don't always question every single bond and levy that are going on. Not that you shouldn't question it, but there's a culture of putting importance on that bond and levy and believing in the elected leadership that you've elected, that they're going to do the right thing. So hopefully, along with ourselves and PCBS and the school district, we can hope to and continue to change that culture for Pasco. As I mentioned earlier, on November 28th, we won't have a regularly scheduled board meeting. We'll have a board study session in order to debrief on what we learned at WASDA. And on December 12th, our next board meeting after that, we will have board reorganization where we elect officers. So I've been doing this for a couple of years. I wouldn't mind. I think it continues to allow for board growth when we have different leadership in the president, vice president position. So everybody think about that. And when we come back on December 12th, we'll talk as a board and figure out who our elected officers are for 2018. And with that, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is number 10. We have reports and discussion. Agenda item number 10A, outrageous outcomes. We have Ms. Michelle Whitney.
So thank you, Board President Lehrman, members of the board. It is my honor to be here tonight to continue a focus on our outrageous outcomes. Tonight, I will be focusing on our outrageous outcome of 100% of our ninth graders ending the school year on track for graduation. This particular outcome aligns with a data set that was identified as a key priority by OSPI. So we continue to be validated by groups like OSPI, the Washington State Board of Education, et cetera, in your identification of these 5 particular outrageous outcomes. So tonight, there are data benchmarks tonight that I will not be highlighting. They are after the thank you slide, and I will certainly come back to you as a board with any of those that you want me to highlight as a data bite. In an effort to be brief this evening, because there are a variety of topics on the agenda tonight, I did modify the presentation down to just a core few of the data slides that are specific to this particular outrageous outcome. And we continue as a staff to experiment a bit with how we're visually representing this data to you. Mark Garrett and his staff are working really diligently on the data dashboard, which will eventually evolve this into a very modern dashboard system. I got a little bit of a sneak preview yesterday, and it's coming along nicely, and I think you'll be pleased with the progress around it. So in the interim, we're doing it old school with some PowerPoint slides. This is the Washington, WA Kids assessment data fall of 15 compared to fall of 16. And the thing to recognize here again is that the Spanish language and literacy is not represented on this slide. However, I think I've cracked the code around that with some help from my friends Christy Dawkin and Mark Garrett, and we'll be able to bring a set of data to you in a data bite soon that does have that data. So this data has 6 areas that have a comparison from 15-16. So what I did this time in putting the data in front of you to a little bit put it in context, the line represents OSPI, or the state data. So you can compare where our incoming kindergartners are up against where those are across the state. Again, the dark blue is those students who are coming into our schools prepared as a 4-year-old, or those that are, the green is those of a 5-year-old. And again, the line represents where the state is scoring. So you can see in 2015 in the physical category, our students actually outscored the state. In 16, we're slightly under, so that you can kind of see a comparison with where the state is against the state data.
Just to be clear, the state data includes 4 and 5-year-olds?
Correct. So
I'm still a little confused on it, because say the social emotional growth, 5-year-olds, 39% of 5-year-olds are ready at the developmental level. 32% is, so I don't understand how that equates to now 60% of our kids, or 70% of our kids are on track, are prepared for kindergarten, or the social emotional. Is that how that works, or
No,
are those 2 separate pieces?
The 4 and 5, these are all 5-year-olds. It's the skill of a 4-year-old, have the skill of a 5-year-old at the start of kindergarten for fit. So it's a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. So
what's the blue then?
So Amy, looking at, let's take social emotional 2016.
Okay.
Those are the students, the kindergartners that are in our kindergarten classrooms right now. When we give them the test will identify, do they have skills of a 4-year-old, or like a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old. So in our classroom right now, 41% of the students that are sitting in a kindergarten classroom exhibit the skills expected of a 4-year-old around social and emotional categories, or the components identified under the social and emotional assessment. 28% of our kindergartners in our classroom right now are exhibiting those skills that we would expect of a 5-year-old.
I want to go back to what you said to Mr. Richardson, Mr. Christensen. I thought in the past we were much, much below the state average, and we said that for those at the 5-year-old level. I wouldn't have thought that we were this close here. Are you sure that level is not the state 5-year-old level?
That's what I'm wondering.
I think that line might be the state 5-year-old level, not the combined 4 or 5-year-old level.
I'm going to defer to Mark on the line.
Yeah, no, it's 4 and 5. Probably it's just a different ratio of 4 and 5-year-olds.
Okay.
So, for example, maybe the majority, to use the 2016 social emotional, maybe it's 50% are in the state, maybe that's 50% in the 5-year-old level. So it's just it's a way by looking at the 4 and 5-year-old to kind of track growth. You can see how much, how students are moving from that 4 to the 5-year-old level.
So maybe we've looked like we're way behind the state average because we've always looked at it as being ready for kindergarten as being at the 5-year-old level. So when you just look at 5-year-olds versus our 5-year-olds, it's much lower than the state line. But when we put 4-year-olds into it, it pushes us up there. We haven't looked at it like this before.
Correct.
Because I think we've asked the question before, what is ready for kindergarten? And we've said it's not 4-year-olds, so we've only looked at 5-year-olds.
Right, and actually the DataByte data set, the DataByte set that I have will actually, I think, be a clearer a clearer data shot of what our kids can really do, because again, it will have our kids that are taking the test in Spanish. So I'm going to bring that to you as a DataByte to see if that particular visual representation more clearly explains where our kids are, and that the way we're visually representing it in the DataByte may replace this if it's clearer for the board.
This seems pretty optimistic.
What's that?
This seems pretty optimistic versus the data we've looked at in the past.
I have to be honest, I have a very difficult time every time I come in front of the board in having a slide that doesn't represent our students who take this test in Spanish. So we've been working desperately to figure out a way to represent that due to the fact that that data is not in the OSPR report card. And so I think we've, again, cracked that code. I'll bring that to you as a DataByte. If that's a better representation for the board, we will use that and replace this data. So it's still, these data benchmarks are going to be a work in progress for a while for us.
Yeah, I really like the fact that we can, I think it would be nice to put side by side our kids that are 4 and see how many shift. And as Ready for Kindergarten progresses, that, you know, we have this much more green, this much less blue. That's great. I'd also love to know how many of our 5-year-olds are ready for kindergarten compared to how many of our 5-year-olds are ready for kindergarten at the state level. I'd really like to see those two numbers because I know they're vastly different than these.
So this data set is the state standard, or the state testing. This one is percentage of students meeting standard on our English language arts test. The green is 16, the blue is 17, and it represents grades 3, 4, 5, or 3 through 8. So this time in the analysis, I tried to draw some trends in terms of where we're seeing a downward trend, but also to provide you some data around what the state saw in terms of trends. So if you look for us, we saw an upward trend in grades 5, 6, 7, and 8, where the state saw an upward trend in grade 7. So again, trying to provide a little bit of context for you in terms of what the data means. So in terms of mathematics, again, our state assessment data, we saw a downward trend in grades 3, 5, 7, and 8, but an upward trend in grades 4 and 6. And then again, you can see represented on the slide, the state saw some downward trending as well in grades 3 through 5 and 8. So you can see where we saw some downward trending, the state did as well. And then the state saw some upward trending in grades 6 and 7. So we're consistent with the state in terms of our upward trending in 6th grade, but we saw upward trend in 4th grade where the state did not. This represents our science data, and you see a downward trend here. I think the most important piece to understand about this data is the state also saw a downward trend, and in doing some research with my middle school colleagues, principal colleagues, this particular MSP year the state test for science was a blend of the Washington State Learning Standards and the NGSS standards. So remember, there's going to be a standard transition come up here pretty soon, and this test was a blend of both. So that would explain why we saw a downward trend, and it also explains why the state saw a downward trend. Our middle school, in talking to the middle school principals, they're doing some specific training and instruction with students around what they'll need to do differently in terms of responding as it aligns with the NGSS standards. This represents our percentage of 9th grade students that that are earning the appropriate amount of credits. I just want to point out that in 15, 16, 16, 17, on track is calculated at 5.5, but remember in 17, 18, that will go to 6 based on the Core 24 requirements. On average, there are fewer students earning 5 or less credits, and there are more students on track for graduation with that 5.5 credit requirement in 16, 17 as compared to 15, 16. Total absences, if you look, our data around absences, we had some issues this year, but I just wanted to kind of provide a caveat, certainly not an excuse, but an awareness that we did have Snowmageddon this year, and it certainly, we had approximately 17, possibly more days of interrupted instruction, either with a delay or cancellation, and certainly some hazardous road conditions where we absolutely honor our parents' decision-making around their level of comfort with their students attending school, and so I believe that was the impact to our attendance data. Certainly we'll keep our eye on it and hope for good weather this year and uninterrupted instruction through the winter. And I hear laughter over here. Unexcused absences, again, we saw, there was the largest percentage of our students still have less than 5 unexcused absences. We did see a little bit of increase and decrease across the board, but again, I think it was an anomaly this year with the weather. Our schools district staff do a great job of making sure that our kids are getting their absences excused. So again, we'll keep our eye on our attendance data and hope for a good weather winter.
Just a question on this. Just trying to do the numbers real quick. So not every student has an unexcused absence.
Correct.
We don't. That's not reflected in here. Correct.
Right. So
or
of the students,
less than 5 would be 0. Okay, so 0 is included in there, so it's less than 5. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can you give us a number sometime, a comparison? Because it's hard to weighted average this. One day or 0 days the same as 5, and 10 versus 17 is the same. Just sometime an average of number of unexcused absences per student in each year. It's just one number. It's going to be like one year it's 3.3, and the next year it's 3, and that's an improvement. But this way it'll be hard to ever tell an improvement for me.
Okay. Our suspension and expulsion data shows downward trends in both the number of or percentage of students who experienced a suspension or expulsion, and then also a reduction in the number of incidents that result in that. So certainly with our focus on keeping kids in schools, kids that are in school are kids that are learning, but also making sure we have safe environments for all kids. This has been a focus for us, and you see an overall reduction in both percentage of students being suspended or expelled and the number of incidents that would result in those suspensions. So a piece that I added to this particular presentation to you that I'm super excited about is we did have a student advisory committee meeting on December 6th. Kristana and Vanessa and Angel Rocha helped facilitate that. And one of the activities during the student advisory council meeting was for the students to provide us voice around how do we move the needle around these outrageous outcomes. So our high school students gave us feedback on our 100% extracurricular activities, on track for graduation, graduating, and 9th grade algebra. So what this slide represents is the feedback, or when asked the question, our students that were in the room for the Student Advisory Council meeting, how do we move the needle to 100% if that's our goal? These are the things that they talked about. And they really highlighted or suggested that we consider using students as mentors and really capitalizing on the relationship, that peer relationship with each other. They suggested having a student explain to freshmen, potentially like a senior maybe that got off to a little bit of a rough start, or a senior that has been on track the whole time, to say, hey, coming in and talking to the freshmen about here's the consequences of potentially falling behind. Having students reinforce with students the 24 credit system so that freshmen understand there's really no room, quote unquote, to goof around, like in the 24 credit system, that there's not a lot of leeway at this point. And they use the term, if you start off right, you finish right. I did take some editor rights on this one. I believe the bullet said scare them into understanding the consequences of, but I thought perhaps we would instead give a speech as an illustration of the path that they took. So the idea was that you take a student that perhaps had kind of a rough go at high school, and you put them in front of the freshmen and say, look, here's the decisions I made, here's how it impacted my trajectory in my high school career, and these are the mistakes I made, and don't make those. But they thought maybe a scare tactic would be that. But we would wanted to give it a positive illustration. They also really highlighted the use of adult mentors, and again, I took a little bit of editor license here, and have an adult mentor give a speech that illustrates the path they took. And again, someone who maybe struggled or had a little bit of a rough start, and how they navigated their high school career. And now I'm successful, and this was my high school career. I made some missteps, but look at me, I got it together. The Student Advisory Council thought that that would be a great illustration for students and a way to motivate and inspire them. The other feedback had to do with really emphasizing for students the importance of high school, and I see that not only as a district staff opportunity, but as a community opportunity, as we as a collective community can unite around our students and all of us providing information to them about how important high school is. They talked about specifically understanding the importance of managing time, and Kristana with her caseload or her credit load, I'm sure, is experiencing that. They also talked about us being very intentional in teaching our students some stress relieving or stress management techniques that, the life of a current high school student is stressful, and teaching them early on how to manage that would be of benefit to them. And then also, a ton of the comments that our students made really highlighted the importance of that student and staff connection. They talked about, I attend best in classes where I know my teacher cares about me. So they gave some specific ideas about having an adult responsible for checking in with a small group of maybe 5 to 10 and providing assistance. Mrs. Hall will provide some information about advisory, which aligns with that idea. Providing extra help to finish or pass classes. We in Pasco School District have a mechanism called a flight team. So there's those of us in the district who are trained specifically to respond to school sites when there's a trauma or a loss or a building is experiencing grief. So we get the call, we all know our jobs, and we descend on that school and we support them as long as we need them. And one of the students was at a school where we came and did that. And she said, that thing you do when you came and when we, and I said, oh yeah. She goes, what was that called? It was a flight team. She said, well, it would be really awesome if you had something just like that when there's a student who's not on track for graduation. So I thought that was I have a huge just personal connection to the flight team concept, and so I thought that was a great illustration, and I was touched that it meant so much to her and she would like us to replicate it. They talked about increasing credit retrieval opportunities and also said we need longer classes and more credits per year, and they specifically talked about, that trimester system that Delta has, we would really like to have that.
I like that concept of, getting all the kids that, and showing them they're not the only one, they're part of a team, and that you guys are here to help all of them, that they're not in it alone. So that sounds awesome.
Well, and even the opportunity to speak to the high school students today, I was thinking about the feedback from the Student Advisory Council, so I told the story I didn't start out knowing exactly what I wanted to do, yet I was able to be successful and navigate college. And I think it's surprising sometimes to kids that those of us who do jobs like this, I didn't know from the time I was a kindergartner that I wanted to be a teacher. It was an evolution, and I got kind of a slow start at things, but it doesn't mean that you still can't be successful. So if there's no questions on that part, I would like to turn the last slide over to Suzanne Hall, who will give you an update on those things, those key actions that we've been working on and some very specific initiatives.
Hey, I really appreciate the fact that we have data from 3rd grade up, because we cannot accomplish these goals by addressing them at the 9th grade or wherever these particular goals land. We have to look at these grades, and I love that, because then it lets those, hopefully our principals know too, we've got to track this so that we can get our kids on track for graduation by 9th grade. If our kids are reading on level and doing math on level in these lower grades, they're going to be on track for graduation of the 9th grade, much more likely to. So thank you for bringing that in.
And as always, I'm really excited to come and share and give you an update on some of the new and key efforts that are underway this year under the College and Career Ready Initiative. And I'm really happy to highlight some of the things that are being implemented that incorporate the student voice and the advice and the information that we got from the students as well as the community in developing these kind of key efforts. Some of this will sound familiar from our previous board study session with you, but I just wanted to hit those highlights again. One of our key efforts, and it's been alluded to in this previous slide, is that we have an implementation of the advisory at both high schools now. And we had probably 15 teachers that worked on these lessons diligently for almost 120 hours. They built the lessons and they're designed to be sequential in terms of from 9th grade to 12th grade and helping kids identify their gifts, their self-interests, and their skills so that they can have a personalized pathway and feel like they're more engaged in the courses that they're taking. Another focus this year has been to improve the use of the data, and we've been alluding to it, for both academic and behavior. The goal of this, too, is to intervene more quickly. The frustration in the past has been we feel like there's just been a lag in time, and this year we've been really happy with the process in terms of identifying kids and getting them into interventions and supports more quickly. They are basically teams that include grade level representation of an administrator, counselor, and interventionist. And each week they go over the progress of students by looking at grades, attendance, discipline, all of those factors that we feel are important to keep our eye on. And they talk to those kids immediately, call families, and get them into interventions as best we can. And like we had mentioned earlier, we're working with Mark to provide an electronic system so it won't be so labor intensive. Right now we're having to run a lot of separate reports on those indicators. But with Mark, he's going to make a one-stop shop dashboard that we can just use more efficiently, and hopefully this will again help speed up the process of getting support to students who are struggling. Another exciting partnership that we started this year working with Brian Levitt and his team is a partnership with Tri-Cities Community Health. And what they're providing for us is a phone call away. They can provide an assessment on students that we've deemed as either high risk or needing additional support. They bring their service people in to do an assessment, work with those families, and provide immediate wraparound services. So we are really pleased to be able to launch that this year and have this new partnership. We have also hired 4 new positions, 2 at each high school, with a focus on either a social community network focus or a behavior support person that can be a part of this team and expand services for kids that are needing either more mental support, mental emotional support, or maybe some more in-depth counseling that requires greater expertise than our counselors are able to provide. And finally, we're exploring, as you know, new credit-bearing courses at both the middle school and the high school for students that will help us personalize their education. And we think this is key for keeping kids motivated and engaged, especially our juniors and seniors. So all of these efforts that I've just mentioned are designed to expand engaging opportunities for students as well as improve our strategies to keep all students on track for graduation and hit that 100% mark. So with that, I think that's a thank you, right? Okay.
Questions from the board for Ms. Hall or Ms. Whitney?
So did I understand you right? You've had a group of teachers that are helping put together a program to help us students identify their skills and their interests. Are we going to get a presentation on that sometime? Or?
Yes, we would love to do that. So Brian Thomas and Wade Barrow are the lead counselors working with other staff members to develop these lessons. And they have just put in countless hours and are using a lot of different tools that will help kids like do self-interest surveys, what's my learning style, map out what careers they have, in alignment with their attributes. There's just a lot of wonderful lessons, and we'd be happy to have them come and share the curriculum and what it looks like.
They're going to do that for each high school? Like Brian's going to go into each high school himself, or who's?
Brian was the lead for developing the lessons for Chiawana, and Wade was the lead for helping to develop the lessons at Pasco High School.
And why do they have different lessons?
They are actually, I would say, similar, and we could ask them to point out where there might be some differences and maybe explain what they feel was important about those specific lessons. But there's key things that we are talking about. What standards do we feel needs to be at the 9th grade, the 10th grade, 11th, and 12th? And then how do we offer different strategies or experiences for kids who may be thinking more in terms of career or military versus college? So if we have a student who's really interested in college, we want to make sure that they are taught how to work through the FAFSA, the scholarship process, and applying for college, let's say.
And I put in another plug, I brought this up before, for dedicated career counselors doing these exact things plus more at each of our high schools if we have additional funding from this new state funding that we have. I had that at my high school, and I'm sure that person made their salary plus more many times over in helping kids, like you say, not only figure out what they're good at, tell them what their options are, help them navigate through FAFSA, help them navigate through scholarships, help them navigate through military, help them navigate through everything going forward. And I think that was invaluable at my high school and in my experience. And hopefully if we have extra funding from HB 2242, we can maybe fund that in the future.
I do have a comment.
Sure.
You guys were asking about curriculum, and at my school we have advisory, and I've been a part of it throughout my 4 years, starting in 9th grade. And in advisory, originally in 9th grade, we focused on the brain and cognitive skills and kind of learning about the best way to learn. And then also the 9th grade and sophomore levels had peer mentors come, and we split into groups of like 4 or 5, and then the seniors and juniors came to 9th and 10th graders during advisory and on Fridays, and they kind of talked to them and helped them go through their problems and things that they were struggling with in their classroom. And in our senior grade level, we have advisory for scholarships and FAFSA and college type stuff, but then we have a mandatory career choices class where we go around the community and visit different centers where we meet with people of different professions, and we kind of take these field trips to better understand the different opportunities and internships and different career choices that there are, and we learn about finance, and we take quizzes, and we develop our 21st century skills and focus our careers in our career choices class. So.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I just love, I've wanted to highlight too kind of the student input. I mean, that's just invaluable to just have that input of, what works, what do you need, and what works for you. And, I hear a lot of those same concerns at work on a frequent basis. And I think what Ms. Stoll just mentioned to me really highlights the beauty of small. And so Delta is not overcrowded. Delta is capped at, I think, 400 students. I think it's 100 per year. Whereas our other high schools are very challenged because they have to keep absorbing all the people that move into our community, and that is a heavy burden. And so all these houses that are built, they have to keep absorbing those students. And so we can incorporate some of those principles, but it's very challenging with the severity of overcrowding. So I'm actually in favor of providing some relief to that by having Pasco. I would be in favor of us using money to develop another STEM high school similar to Delta. Just throwing that out there because this fits into this discussion because we have students right now that want to do that can't, a huge number. And so that would relieve some of the overcrowding at our comprehensive high schools and allow for that opportunity for the students that want that type of education.
I think another important thing about overcrowding that you were mentioning is everyone knows everyone, but the cool thing about our advisory classes is we have different classes each trimester, so we have different people in our classes each trimester, but in advisory we stick with the same people throughout the entire year, so you develop a stronger connection with your teacher and the classes in that smaller advisory class setting.
Delta's on trimesters? Sorry, I didn't know that.
Well, that's where my question is going. I know that we had a group of teachers that were looking at the trimesters program for our high schools. Where is that, and when is that decision going to be made? Because we are about to, is it next year our first freshman class that has to have all these credits?
Yeah, I believe that the CCRI folks are on our agenda for an update coming up soon, so we can talk about that at agenda setting and make sure that you guys get an update.
Great. How are you, another question that's totally different, but how are you going to implement the student advisory? They had some great ideas, but the student advisory ideas, do you present those to the principals and let them decide? How do you go about implementing these kids' ideas to make them a reality?
So you're the first to hear them as a board tonight, and then I'll hand them to Suzanne Hall as she works with her group with the college and the CCRI group for consideration and implementation. I think the piece around like the small groups, the advisory component, when you hear about that, that's a way to break kids into small groups. So I think we're headed in that direction. I think the things that we want to implement in terms of the CCRI initiatives align with what the students are asking for. And I think that's the power and beauty of it. So like I said, that body of work will get handed to Suzanne and her team for consideration and potential implementation.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think another thing, Ms. Phillips, that came to my mind is, these types of skills have to be established when kids are young. So one of our challenges with elementary schools with 900 students and one counselor is that they're not able to do what they love to do, which is have small groups or work with classes on things like this, stress management, time relief, study skills, being a good friend, And so instead of prevention, we're focused on intervention and putting out fires. And if we if we had the space and the resources, which the increased funding will help to have another counselor or behavior specialist, I can see them starting to do some of those things and helping the kids in elementary school establish these skills that they need to be successful, because ninth grade, right, is too late if you've established 14 years of doing things a certain way. So I think that's a positive that we have as well.
Well, I appreciate the extra counselor, because that has been something that I have heard consistently over the board. Sometimes our counselors are dealing so much with mental health issues and emotional health issues that they don't have the time to devote to scholarships and helping these kids be on track. So adding some extra FTEs is really important, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, the behavior specialist has been a critical component to kind of the broader system, and we're really excited about what the partnership with Tri-Cities Community Health will do for us. So like with any new partnership, there'll be some bugs we need to work out, but I think that the potential to make a real difference with our kids is there.
So does Delta participate in any of that, or just because it's Pasco School District and that's a different one, will they have that partnership with Community Health as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Scott, you indicated you had a...
Can we go back to the suspension and expulsions page? So there's multiple ways to reduce suspensions and expulsions. One's to change behavior so that there's actually less, and the second is to change how you evaluate that behavior and hand out suspensions or expulsions. Did we change anything in 2016 to 2017 in how suspensions and expulsions were handed out, and were they handed out consistently across the district from school to school?
So over the course of the last, 3 years, I think we started in 2014, we've focused on mechanisms or a framework for looking at how we respond to lower level behaviors through a positive lens and a restorative lens. So that has been a focus, in getting consistent about our expectations, et cetera, has been a focus over the last 3 years. Now, how that dovetails with suspensions or expulsions, it has an impact, or I'm not sure, but it has been a focus for us over the last 3 years. The other thing that has changed is the law around discipline data has changed, or the way that we exclude kids has changed. And so it's narrowed the window of what we can exclude kids for. And I think the challenge for us as a system now is, if we're not excluding kids from school, how do we intervene with those behaviors in a way that still allows us to maintain disruption and safe environments for the rest of our kids to learn. And so we're putting those pieces together with the work on the seamless intervention work that Eric Bowles is navigating, and we have an RTI, a Response to Intervention Steering Committee, that we're just putting together in collaboration with Pasco Association of Educators. So we're really just in the infancy stages of a systematic approach to dealing with student behavior. So it's, I think, a little too early to tell, like, what is it that moved the needle and reduced that, but our goal would be to be able to connect some dots in the next couple of years around that.
So are we consistent across the district? So we get emails, I know you do too, about bullying. Are we consistent about how that's recorded from school to school? Because sometimes I hear this and this happened to my kid. Well, what happened? Nothing. And then I hear this and this, the same thing happened to some other kid. Well, they had it recorded down and they have these certain records. Well, this and this, the same thing happened to another kid. You know, there's different, I don't want to say punishments, but different levels of recording and different actions taken. Do we believe we're consistent, at least like at the bullying level, across the district at this point? And if we're not, how can we get consistent?
So we have a consistent policy, procedure, and expectation. And I think for the broad majority of the time that those policies, procedures, and expectations are applied consistently. Sometimes there's anomalies, and those get reported to us. And if there's an inconsistency, we dig into that and we talk about how do we make sure that we're moving toward consistency. I think the focus on the positive supports has allowed us to get clear around what are the common area expectations, so that some of our behavior expectations are more consistent across the district. But in a large district, which lots of different buildings and students, consistency is something we're going to have to strive for all the time. We are having conversations at the principal level. We looked at discipline data for the first time this year and did a data carousel around it where we had some deep conversations around it. But that's going to be something for us to strive for as we continue to keep efficiency, consistency, proactivity out in front of us.
So, because what I'd like to see, I mean, getting a suspension or expulsion, that's like the last straw. You've done something wrong in most cases, something really wrong, or you've done something kind of wrong a lot of times. And so if we're actually recording down bullying or whatever these incidences are that we're recording down each time they happen, can we track that from year to year? So I don't want to call them minor, but this is kind of like, how many people in your community go to jail? Well, as we as a district talk about, well, how do you keep them from going to jail? You dig a little deeper and you teach them like we're talking about here, and you have kind of lower level or higher level goals, however you want to talk about it. But I don't know what the answer is on what kind of reports you'd track, but something a little lower level than somebody's messed up 5 times and now they got suspended.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I mean,
what would it be?
Sure.
Some kind of...
Absolutely. We can do all those kinds of things.
Is it some kind of report that we can usually count?
I'm sure that there is, and I can do some research about exactly what it is that the board's looking for, and put a mechanism in place. For this particular outrageous outcome, that was the data that was chosen as a data set. Right. But for another presentation at another time, we can look into how we can do that for you. Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
PBIS, isn't that the behavior program that has been sort of implemented in the district? Is that what it's called?
Right. Our focus has been on PBIS. We have supported that initiative with both FTE, and then also training, and we'll continue to support that as an initiative of the districts.
Okay, because I've heard that can be very successful in reducing those outbursts because it is very positive based, and if you can keep a child from escalating, then you can keep him from getting into those really bad situations. So
thank you. Any questions or comments? I'll open up the microphone to the public this time if you have any questions or comments for the board on this topic before we move on. All right, next we have agenda item number 10B. We have Parent Education Center offerings.
It's my absolute honor to introduce to you tonight Alma Duran, who does a number of functions for us in the district, which one of is supervision of the Parent Education Center.
So good evening, Board President Lehrman, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. I'm here this evening to provide you with an update on our Parent Educational Center. I do that all the time. I'd first like to begin by sharing our organizational chart. Lorraine Landon, who's here with us tonight, is our Special Programs Coordinator who oversees the Parent Ed Center. She oversees district donations, home visitors, student achievement specialists, our bilingual PAC, our ATP, and now is our district homeless liaison. Alex Torres is her secretary. Esmeralda Magaña Valencia is the parent engagement coordinator who oversees Parent Ed Center as well and ATP. Arlene Valdovinos is our daytime tutor, ESL tutor, and Daisy Madrigal is our children's center tutor. Maria Morfin, the child center para, and then we just recently hired 2 additional staff as tutors, Violeta Rivera, Brina Zane, who are not pictured here, and we also have a business intern from the high school who comes and assists them. So the Parent Ed Center began as a Title I requirement for parent involvement and has been serving Pasco Title I parents since 1997. The Parent Educational Center is located at Stevens Middle School in Portable 601 and 602. Portable 601 houses a children's center, while Portable 602 houses the parent sessions that are offered during the day and in the evenings. It also houses all of our Parent Ed staff there. Sessions are offered throughout the year, ranging from 3 weeks to year-long sessions. An example would be our computer courses that are offered in 3 week spans. Our ESL sessions are instructed by our Parent Ed staff, and they're offered year-round. So this graph represents the number of Parent Ed sessions that have been offered within the last 3 years. As you can see, we have doubled the number of parent offerings since 2015-16. In 2015-16, there were a total of 5 sessions available during the day. 3 were at the Parent Ed Center and 2 evening sessions at Mary Curie STEM Elementary. Last year, we added an additional session during the day. And then this year, I'm happy to announce that we've added 4 additional sessions, thus eliminating our waiting list. So flyers for parents are sent to all elementary schools which go home with students on their their Wednesday envelopes. Copies are also provided to our home visitors and our student achievement specialists who work with families. The schedules are also listed in the Parent Educational website. They are handed out to all of our bilingual parents at our bilingual PEC general sessions, as well as our ATP cluster meetings. The Parent Ed Center also works in collaboration with Columbia Basin College, who provides ESL sessions quarterly. Collaborating with the community and guest speakers is an essential part to any ESL classroom. Last year, our very own superintendent, Ms. Whitney, was a guest speaker and shared her role as a superintendent. This year, in September and October, we offered some guest speakers, and they included our very own nurse, Gloria Larson, who provided training in reading the nutritional labels, as well as Edgar Rivera, agriculture outreach specialist from WorkSource, who provided resources and trainings that are being offered at Columbia Basin College. Okay. Read and Rise is a kindergarten readiness program that is taught by our tutor, Arlene Valdovinos, which teaches families the importance of reading together. The Read and Rise program provides families with hands-on strategies for building literacy at home. It reinforces the fact that the parents are the child's first and most important teacher. It also builds text-rich environments at homes by providing take-home books for parents. And this slide provides a list of sessions that were offered last year and the total number of participants. And as you can see, we had a total of 200 parents participate in sessions and a total of 184 children that participated in the Children's Center. This year, we have added 4 additional sessions and additional ESL class, math and literacy strategies in Spanish, as well as a session titled Saber Decirlo, Colegio para Padres. And this session is a 45-minute webinar-style workshop to help develop parent leadership. It is currently being offered to our bilingual PAC advisory committee, and our intention is to later have those webinars available to all of our parents that attend the Parent Center. In conclusion, at the end of each session, parent evaluations are given to parents, and they answer 3 questions, which include: what did you enjoy about the class, suggestions for improving, and any additional comments they might have. Listening to parents is a key in working in the work that we do. Parent suggestions help us plan for the following year's sessions. Last year's parents suggestions included that they wanted more information on how to apply to Pasco School District, and as a response to the parents' request, we are currently working with our employee services to provide a session on this very own topic. Overall, as you can see by the comments provided, all parents seem to be very appreciative in all the sessions that are provided. And with that, I'd like to answer any questions that you might have.
I just want to thank the district, and I really can't be understated as an absolute huge success. And I have to admit, I started to cry when I heard this because, when you think of all things we could do to help a child and their family situation, this is it. This will give you more bang for your buck than anything, empowering the parents to learn their English skills, computer skills, essentially giving them the resources to help their child as their child's first and most important teacher. So hearing that our waiting list just got eliminated, so now we're able to offer everyone that wants to better their situation, you come and we're going to help you do it. And that is just awesome. And so you combine that with the Read and Rise and the Ready for Kindergarten. That essentially anyone that wants to find the time, split it with a neighbor, can make it happen, and you can be given the resources, and that is just amazing to me. So thank you so much.
I just want to say that this is something great. I know some students maybe go home and their parents can help them with homework, and I think this will help the kids that are getting ready for kinder or first grade to improve their reading if the parents are able to help them read. So,
I too want to congratulate you on a job well done. Eliminating that waiting list was critical, and I am so grateful that it happened. And using the excess space that we have at some of our junior highs that are undercrowded is a great way to use that space to help educate our kids. I was wondering, so is the Read and Wise, does that go on at the same time as the parent classes?
So Arlene Valdovino is our tutor. She doesn't. She works 4 days out of the week. On Friday, she doesn't have any sessions, and so or provides sessions 4 days out of the week. On Fridays, she provides that extra session of Read and Rise. Okay. Yeah, and that session lasts 6 weeks. So after those 6 weeks, then
we get a new set of
start again.
Kids. Okay. Do we have any data on those kids that parents have gone through that to see if they're any better ready for kindergarten than their?
Yeah, right now we haven't tracked that, but we could definitely look into to see where they're at. When they started in the child center, and then have they participated and where they're at.
At some level, at some time, we might say, hey, there's this program rather than this program. And I think it's critical that we track these kids in these programs simply because then we'll know it's working or it's not working. Let's do something else, or let's continue with this. So I love having these. I just want to make sure that we're giving our kids the very best, and they're growing. And if they're not, then, but I love the idea of this, love the idea of Read and Wise, and thrilled with the work that you're doing.
What are the ESL numbers? I mean, you have 1 and then 2/3 and then 1 to 6.
So the ESL instructor for CBC, she teaches ESL in the evenings, levels 1 through 6. So basically, the parents who are interested in taking the course through CBC or through their instructor, they'll take a test, and then it ranks them per level, and so that's how it arranges the class level.
So there's a lot of flexibility in the evenings to have.
Yes.
You can take any level in the evening.
Yes, yes.
What about
Teach them to their level.
What about Read and Rise? It's only 9:30 to 11, which targets parents that are home with their kid now. Are we targeting parents that are both parents are working during the day with that program, or could we?
We could.
Should we?
Yeah, we could. Currently, right now, because Arlene is our tutor who's working during the day is when she's offering that class, but definitely we could target evening parents and provide something in the afternoon.
Is she willing to work nights? I mean, is it, we're not doing it, we haven't looked into what's better for
our parents.
For our parents, we're doing it based on the.
So my understanding with
based
Read
on
and
our-
Rise, it's through Scholastic, and so anybody can get trained to provide those trainings, and so we can always just explore training somebody else and have them provide that training in the evening if she's not able to. And
So-
Lorraine Landon is also trained as a Read and Rise trainer, but she's overworked. But I'm sure she'd be happy to do something if needed as well.
So we've talked about early learning opportunities that we're exploring. This isn't part of the, I've not seen this Read and Rise before. Is there a reason that's not on our list of options, like Ready for Kindergarten, and then the one that goes to the daycare centers, and then there's another one that's changed names recently? Is Read and Rise would be another program I would expect that falls in that category.
I can't answer the question, and I was looking out in the audience for a phone of the friend, and I can't see Christy Dawkins. I'm not sure why it's not on our list, but we certainly could explore it.
Yes. So anyway, great. I think this is another program that could be helpful in that arena. And thank you for this presentation, and thank you for the work you do for educating our parents. I think this is critical. This is targeted primarily towards Spanish-speaking parents. Is that correct?
The parents that we serve, the majority are the ones that register are a Spanish speaker and speaking, and so they're the ones that have taken.
Sure. That's great. I think we need to reach out to them. I think their students are going to probably struggle more than others when it comes to education because they don't speak the language, and generally they are less affluent and have less resources and opportunities. So I think that, to me, that is a critical component of our education system, is helping those who are challenged already. And so I'm interested in this Read and Rise program, if it works, if there's a way we can expand it and include it on our stable of other early learning programs, because I think this is targeting the people that have a greater need. So, but thank you for your work and then your presentation.
All right.
Okay, I have a question. One more question on the class offerings page. Like the math strategies in Spanish, literacy strategies in Spanish, did you say, is that teaching parents to teach their kids, or what is
So
that?
those classes will be to help the parents understand math and how it's being taught right now, and so that they can assist their children. at home.
And then what was the last one? The saber de círculo?
Yes, I have to go back to my notes so I could say it correctly because it's brand new. Saber Decirlo, Colegio para Padres. So those are webinars that there's a consultant that works out in Richland. They're husband and wife who are from Mexico, and they have been educators. They've worked with teachers in Mexico, and so very high level of Spanish. And so what they do is they provide webinars to help our parents become leaders. The last webinar they had was all about you as the parent are the role model to be able to teach your children everything that happens in a home matters. And so they're just webinar-based.
Educational leaders for
Yes.
their kids.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the audience to the board on this report?
I just want to put a little bit of perspective in this because my children are in the dual language program. And so when they start kindergarten, most of the instruction they receive is in Spanish. So coming from somebody who does not speak Spanish, I can tell you the perspective of not being able to help your kids when they're coming home and they have homework is one of the most frustrating things I as a parent have ever had to face. So when we look in terms of a parent that is trying to help their students but can't understand the problems they're having or the work they're doing, I can't even imagine on a daily level. At least I had my wife who could help them. But this program is so much more important than I think what most people realize, because when you don't see the frustrations, when you don't have it in your home, you don't understand how hard that is. And it is very, very difficult.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board on this report? All right, next we'll move on to report number 10C. We have recommendation to relocate portables.
Randy and Runamaker will be presenting to the board this evening just a brief report giving you an update in the current thinking around portable locations and portable locations for next year.
Thank you. Board President Lehrman, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. Tonight, the district will provide a report on portable needs for the 2018-19 school year. The purpose of this report, or as part of the district's recommendation for relocation of portable classrooms, we assessed needs in both the elementary and secondary schools. I would like to thank Carla Lobos and Suzanne Hall for the work and support for this recommendation. On October 10th, 2017, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Reyes provided information and facilitated discussion on portable usage. As part of the study session, operational expectations set by the board concerning the use of portable classrooms was covered. This information was used by the staff to assess classroom needs for the 2018-19 portable. As part of the assessment, the district reviewed the current use of the district's 226 portable classrooms, established any changes in the current use of portable classrooms, and used student enrollment projections. These were used for the consideration in the 2018-19 school year. Based on that information, it was recommended for 3 elementary locations that would need additional space for that school year. It was recommended that portable classroom space was not needed in the secondary schools. Let me back up here. There we go. Based on that information, it was recommended that 3 elementary schools receive portables. The initial recommendation is the 3 elementary schools needing additional space due to overcrowding are Livingston, Emerson, and McClintock elementary schools. This is a preliminary recommendation that could change depending on the bond results. The next step will be to finalize the recommendation once bond results are final, and then establish cost estimates and bring the request for portable relocation back to the board for approval at the December 12th board meeting. And thank you. Any questions I can answer?
Thank you, Mr. Nunemaker. What school or schools are they being relocated from?
That's to be determined yet. That'll be something that we'll look at in the next week or two. We'll work with Susanna and Carla on that. We'll prioritize those, but that hasn't been determined yet.
But the plan would be to relocate, not purchase new?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Nunemaker. I think that's great that you know, we kind of have had that directive to not purchase new portables, and in visiting the elementary schools, I believe there are ones where that, and principals agree that that would be a possibility to send those to schools that are more needy. So I appreciate that. And I'm excited we only need to move 3, so hopefully and maybe that won't be necessary, like you said, depending on the results in the next couple of weeks.
So you're going to have some kind of ranking for figuring out what school to move them from. Is there a way to, during this process, you're going to have, I don't know what it is, formula, you're going to look at space, everything else, rank all of our 226 portables just in a rank order as to which ones we can or should get rid of first? I understand that with the passage of a bond, you might not be able to knock the number 1 portables on your list off first because of where we're building schools, but with the method you're going to use, is that possible to give us a rank order and use that in future planning as well?
We haven't put together the method yet, you know, as far as how we're going to determine that. There's a number of considerations that go into that, along with what portable classroom rooms we don't want to relocate, we want to eliminate because of the age of the portables too. So as we look at that, we'll look at what portables we can move and what portables will need to remain, just because there's other portables that need to be taken out because of the age of the
think, are you able to, as you go through that process, you have some portables right now that may be shuttered, so they'd be at the top of your list. You have some schools that have 20 portables and need all 20 portables, and they'd be at the bottom of your list.
Sure.
Can you, and we don't need to have a study session on it, but maybe in a Friday update, give us a cut at a rank order of what portables are being used the least in the district?
And I think part of that process, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Reyes is working with me on a portable assessment. I know she's working on that to put together the whole how we use the portables so that we can establish where the portables need to be and where they can be removed from. So that is already in process, but we just haven't determined that yet.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you, Mr. Nunemaker. Questions or comments from the audience to the board on this report? All right, next we have report discussion.
Mr. Lerman.
Sorry. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there.
Again,
Mr. Morales.
maybe it's the coat. I don't know. No, I know in the past we've had kind of the vocal against the portables, and I completely understand that. But we do have a need at McClintock for space. We don't want to send kids away. We don't want to send kids to other schools. And next year, I know we'll have 2 open classrooms due to the relocation of our preschool program, or 2 sections to the ELC. But we actually need 3 classrooms next year because of our growth and the number of students we moved this year to other schools that we'll be bringing back. So I know there'll probably be maybe some changes to it with the bond passing if that occurs, but we'll still need 3 classrooms next year at McClintock. So that is why the request for the portable came forth for our site.
Right, and we understand McClintock is one of the schools that's adding classes every year at this point in its growth due to dual language, so we know that you guys are probably number 1 on needing those portables. You're a school that's guaranteed to need those portables every year, and I probably didn't see that coat. Go Cougs. All right, thank you.
Mr. Lerman, can I make a comment?
Go ahead, Dr.
Morales.
Richardson.
I just want to comment because I appreciate you mentioning that, because my first son was moved, the first year we moved here to, and he always felt like a visitor at that school for a year, and I don't want any student to be moved, period. If the principal and the teachers are willing to make it work, we make it work. And so I don't know, I know that there's, obviously I can't speak to like the PAE agreement. I mean, obviously you have to follow that, but my preference would be that in our protocol of doing things, no child gets moved. If that's your school where you live and your neighbors go to that school, you should not be moved for any period of time. And so, especially not like 2 weeks into the school year, and I think we've done a good job at reducing that, but not at all, because again, we had that experience the first year we moved here, and my son never felt, and the school was great and that he went to, but he always felt out of place because he had gone to his home school with our neighbors for 2 weeks and then was moved for a year and then was moved back. And so I appreciate that. I don't want to see that happen at all. If we can make it work within our obligations with our bargaining, so.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nunemaker. Moving on to agenda item number 10D, we have the board policy 3300, corrective action and discipline.
I'd like to invite Assistant Superintendent Sarah Thornton to the podium to give you the first reading of a set of policies around discipline.
All right. Good evening, Board President Lehrman, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. The policy that we have for you this evening is Policy 3300, Corrective Action and Discipline. This is a mandatory policy revision brought to us courtesy of the changes in the law that have occurred during the 2015 and 2016 legislative sessions. And specifically, HB 1451 requires the district to adopt a modified policy that is consistent with the WASDA model policy. We've held back on modifying this policy because we were waiting on updated WACs from OSPI. They were delayed in their rulemaking. The comment period only just closed at the end of October. The chief legal officer for OSPI was presenting to the State School Attorneys Conference a couple weeks ago, and he indicated that they don't anticipate having the final WACs ready until the spring. And they're hoping that they'll be ready for us to be able to publish updated procedures for schools to incorporate in their handbooks for the following school year. So we couldn't wait any longer, so we're bringing this policy revision to you now. And in essence, it deletes old language that is obsolete based on the changes to the law, and incorporates provisions that will allow us to follow the law as it currently exists and also adopt procedures when the rulemaking is completed. And for the record, I like Mr. Morales' jacket.
Any questions or comments for Ms. Thornton at this time? Thank you, Ms. Thornton. Any questions or comments from the board on this report? Maybe it's later in June. All right, thank you. Moving on to action items, we have action item 11A, Resolution 945, replacement of expiring educational programs and operations levy. We have Mr. Howard Roberts here. The board had extensive discussion on this topic at our study session this afternoon, starting at 4:30. We discussed at a high level three portions of this. We can run a levy in February, in April, in August, or in November. We talked about those options, and the levy is capped at $1.50 for this upcoming timeline here. So we talked about running the levy at $1.50 or less than $1.50 and the implications of that. And we also talked about running the levy for a 2-year levy or a 4-year levy and the pros and cons of that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Roberts.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President Lehrman, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. So really, it's just a summary at this point. You have before you resolution number 945, providing for the submission to the voters on February 13th of 2018, a proposition for a replacement of an expiring education programs and operations levy. Following the direction provided by the board at study sessions both on October 24th and now on November 14th, the proposed levy authorizes tax collections in the amounts you can see there. They're listed in the resolution at the estimated rate of $1.50 per $1,000 of assessed value each year. And with that, I'd invite your consideration of approval of Resolution 945, replacement of expiring education programs and operations.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. I open it up for board discussion.
So I'll say again the same thing I said in study session. We don't know the results of the bond yet, and I do believe the bond will, the results of the bond will impact when we should run this. If the bond passes, then I would be in favor of running this in February. I think there's some energy around that, because I believe our neighboring districts, at least believe our neighboring districts are going to run their levy at the same time. If the bond does not pass, then I would be in favor of putting this off and potentially running the bond and levy together later in the year. And I worry about voter fatigue. We went out in February, we were out now with a bond, we go out in February with this. If we don't pass a bond, and then we're going to go out probably in another year, year and a half with another bond. So I'd just be very cautious. We don't need to make a decision tonight. I understand that we are on a timeline, but we don't have to submit until the 15th, 14th, 12th?
The
sometime in
resolution is
December.
due at the county by the 15th.
Right. Now, we can have it all ready to go and get it over there very quickly, but I would be in favor of putting this off until we know the results of the bond so that we can then make a decision on when is best to run this. I think, so anyway, I'll say that. I think it's worth having a discussion on options if the bond does not pass, but for now, I would propose that we not move on this until we know the results of the bond.
So just to clarify, this would be providing direction to the district, and I know that the bond council would be involved in this, so there'd be some cost and time there. And I'm not saying that the rest of the board is going to vote it down based on the results of the bond, but this would just be to provide direction to bring us back a resolution for possible action on the 15th.
This is the resolution that authorizes the election.
Okay. We get the words later.
No, this is it. This is it.
Yeah, this is not like the bond we did last time where we had a vote and then we had another vote. So this is it.
I would be in favor of the resolution for a 4-year levy at the $1.50. I think we need to do it because we need the levy. And I think that seeing that the other districts are doing it at the same time, I think that we need to do it at this time.
I agree with Ms. Lincoln, and we'll just respectfully disagree with some of the points Mr. Christensen made. So I think actually voter fatigue would be worse if we wait later in the year. If the bond passes, or I feel we should do this either way, because again, the other districts are doing this. The whole state is essentially doing this because this is a dramatic change, and it's, in my mind, we can point out the differences. I actually had people that I talked to about the bond that they didn't believe that this would happen, and that's why they didn't want to support a bond, because they didn't believe that the tax rate would be was going to eventually be lowered. And we've run a levy between $4 and $5 for a number of years, and here it is, right there. They can see it. It's very clear. It's going to drop to $1.50. Now the state is going to increase the state levy by 89 cents roughly. So, but we still come out $2 lower, and so. I believe in people that they can understand that, and with the bond, if it doesn't pass, it'll be very fresh in people's mind. Hey, we desperately need the schools. I would be in favor of running the same bond again, and I think people can understand that. If we wait till April or August or November, people almost forget what had happened. New people move in, and then you have to re-explain to those people. Whereas if we do it together, if it doesn't pass, I think it will pass. I hope it will pass. I think it's just much easier to group together and get right back at them, and they understand this did not pass, and this is why we have to run again, because we're desperate for schools, and waiting, I think, is not a desirable thing to do.
I understand Mr. Christensen's perspective. I think there's some really valid points there. It's going to be really difficult for the district to get a bond up and running in February. And if we're going to do that at the same time as levy, which overall we'd still have a tax cut if we did do that. So I think it's probably a good idea to do that. But I do feel like we do need to make this decision. Ideally, I would like to run that. I would really like, if the bond doesn't pass, I'd like to run it in February if possible. And I just think the best time for the levy is the consistency of February. You know, that's what it's always been. That's what all those other schools are doing. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of education that we don't even have to put out there because the Tri-City Herald's going to be covering it. I just think it's a good idea to run it in February. So I'm in favor of adopting this tonight.
I would agree that from discussion earlier this afternoon that I think it's right to run this levy as we usually do in February. If the bond did fail, running two of them together, we've had the discussion in the past on running a bond and a levy at the same time, and the general consensus, at least from our past discussions, was that it causes additional confusion when the voters get two ballot measures in front of them that are both asking for school dollars. That coupled along with just seeing a school ballot measure 3 months earlier, I think could contribute to some voter no's that may not normally vote no. So I support running this for the full $1.50 in February with a 4-year term on it.
All right, I have to speak again. So here's my concern, and I'll lay it out there. So again, we ran a bond in February, we run a bond in November, and we're going out again in February for a levy. I'm all for that as long as this bond passes. If this bond does not pass, part of the challenge I think we're facing with our bonds is we have not done a good job of educating people. We haven't determined a bond and then worked to get consensus on that bond with our community. We certainly didn't do that this time. We ran it in February, we changed it, ran it again in November. Even a year is a short period of time to try and do that. My preference would be if this bond fails, that we take at least a year, put something together. Again, whether it's November or later, obviously we've got to run a levy sometime, but whether it's November or later, we have to educate people on what we're trying to do. And so I have no fear of running a bond and levy together. To me, it would be easier to educate people one time rather than try and go out and explain what a levy is and then explain what a bond is and what the difference is. I believe most voters just look at this and say it's for schools, I'm either going to support it or I'm not. Or it's a tax and I'm not going to support it. Nobody wants to not support schools, but I believe we would be better served. Again, my fellow board members, we don't have to make this decision tonight. We don't have to submit this till the 15th of December. We can wait so we know the results of the election. Again, if the bond passes, then I am all for running a levy in February. But if not, I think we've got to take a good, long, hard look at how we're doing things. And if we fail this bond, we run out with a levy in February, then we're just extending when we run a bond again. And that concerns me. I think we've got to get a little bit more strategic about how we do things rather than just running out and slapping something in front of the voters and hope they support it.
I mean, we had a big discussion in the study session, but a lot of people don't watch the study sessions and certainly wasn't the attendance there. So a lot of this is repeat for us and that's painful, but we'll just try to highlight. Again, I mentioned in the study session, we've passed one bond in 10 years, over 10 years, that built 3 elementary schools. And in that time, we've grown by roughly 5,000 students, which is the equivalent of 8 to 10 schools. So I'm all for planning, and I think all the past board members that we see, I'd like to think they had some idea that there needs to be some planning. I've seen previous plans. It maybe was not as comprehensive as I would have liked, but the idea of continually waiting continually running small bonds that has happened in the past. You know, one of the reasons that the February bond didn't pass, I believe, is because we didn't listen to what the community said, the feedback we got, and we didn't include a fourth middle school on it. Actually, just had someone today at work tell me, I voted for this bond. I was thrilled because you added the fourth middle school. We needed that. I didn't, you know, the bond that you put forth in February. And so a lot of people feel like if we would have just run that bond in February, it would have passed then. Additionally, I think we did a great job providing information. What we were up against was literally false statements in a voter's guide that went out to every voter in our district that literally said that the state was going to provide us money to build schools. And we had no way to counteract that other than just on a personal basis and trying to reach every voter and explaining that that is just simply not true. And even with that, the bond is about passing, and it would be passing in a landslide if it was not for that. So this was very much thought out, that we don't need to create a new bond. I would be in favor of just promoting the same bond, and I would actually like to, instead of just being sad that and saying we didn't promote or provide the information, I think we did. I would like us to seek some sort of repercussion for the false, fraudulent claims that were put out that influenced some voters to vote no against the bond. So if you want more detailed discussion, you can refer to the study session. We talked about this for a long time.
No, I think we should move to the resolution simply because we have talked about it, and I think we're close to making a decision, and whether or not we run the bond is, you know, something we'll decide later.
And again, we don't have a meeting. We would have to schedule a special meeting, which is very difficult for us as five. We have busy schedules. We would have to schedule a special meeting to decide that, and right after around Thanksgiving. And that would be difficult and would not change how I would vote, and it sounds like how the majority of us would vote.
I move to approve resolution number 945, replacement of expiring education programs and Operation Levy as presented.
I second it.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 945, replacement of expiring educational programs and operational levy as presented. Before I open it up for additional board discussion, is there anybody from the public who would like to comment on this action item to the board? All right, additional board discussion? Seeing that there's no additional board discussion, Ms. Richardson, please call the roll.
Mr. Christensen?
No.
Yes.
Dr. Richardson?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
All right, motion carries to approve resolution number 945, replacement of expiring educational programs and Operation Levy as presented. Thank you, Mr. Roberts, and thank you to the rest of district staff that worked on this information gathering and presentation for us. Next, we have the consent agenda, agenda item number 12. We have personnel warrants, resolution number 942, acceptance of New Horizons relocation project. We have resolution number 943, acceptance of Portables 2017 project. Resolution 944, acceptance of Pasco High Phase 3 projects. Resolution 946, sale of property to clarify records of transfer from 1967. Resolution 947, interlocal agreement with Washington Educational Program Pool. The approval of the Carl Perkins grant application and assurances statement for the 2017-18 school year. Overnight student travel for the Chiawana, Pasco, New Horizons, and Delta High School students to Washington State School Directors Association Annual Conference in Bellevue, Washington. And the overnight student travel for Chiawana High School Ski Club to Bend, Oregon. Overnight student travel for the Chiawana High School Speech and Debate Team to Western Montana Invitational Tournament in Kalispell, Montana. Out-of-state student travel for the Chiawana High School Advancement via Individual Determination College campus visits in Washington and Idaho. And the Senior Center alterations change order number 2. With that, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
There's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Ms. Richardson, please call the roll.
Yes.
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 Motion carries. Consent agenda approved. Before we go on to future agenda items, I did want to, and you'll have to help me with the final date we agreed on. We have a New Horizons High School, New Horizons High School opening. What are we calling it?
Dedication.
Dedication ceremony on what day?
November 20th, right?
November 20th at
Open house is 5 p.m., dedication at 6 p.m.
5 p.m. and dedication at 6 p.m. So we invite those who are here tonight and everyone in the public to join us in that great celebration. It's an awesome venue, an awesome school for our New Horizons students, and we'd love to share it with you and celebrate in this great community accomplishment. And next we have the future agenda items.
So just to remind the board and the public, our next meeting is scheduled for November 28th, and it is a slightly different format. It will be a special board meeting that will consist of a study session only. It will start at 4:30. It's scheduled to go from about 4:30 to 6:30, with the topic being the WASDA debrief. Our next board meeting then, regularly scheduled board meeting, is on the 12th of December. There is a study session listed in future agenda items as a facilities usage policy study session. We're going to push that to the end of January, as we'd like to leave that study session as a placeholder for potential board business around the bond, et cetera. But the board meeting proper will have board reorganization, another outrageous outcome report. Our student board reps will also be doing a board report, and the discipline policies will come back as second reading. We'll also that evening need to appoint the Pro-Con committee for the levy. Then no meeting on the 26th of December, and then we'll be back after the first of the year with a study session on board election follow-up, and some reports on a data bite and an outrageous outcome report. And then potentially even a update from our Student Advisory Council. And it'll be 2018, I can't believe it.
And then a reminder, we have an executive session next under 4231.10.1G personnel and 110I litigation, which was expected to take
Approximately 30 minutes, and we will be requesting no action.
So the board will recess into executive session for 30 minutes at this time. Thank you for joining us this evening.